My recollection of first buying and reading comics goes back to 1960. I discovered The Flash, Green Lantern, Superman, Batman, and the Justice League. As the 1960s progressed, I became, yes, a Marvel fan, collecting the Fantastic Four, Avengers, X-Men, and Spider-Man. Looking back at that time and the comics I collected, I began looking at how the values of those comics compare today. So far, we've looked at 1960 and 1961 in previous videos. Stay tuned for DC vs. Marvel, Battle of the Comic Book Values, 1962.
Anachronic.
Hi comic book guys and gals, I'm Joe, and welcome to the Anachronic Comics channel. In 1961, the publication of Fantastic Four #1 played an important part in the battle, just like the publication of Justice League of America #1 in 1960 did. During our look at 1962, the emergence of the Marvel Age is evident by these results. In 1961, Marvel had just one entry, a significant one, in the top 10. In 1962, the roles are reversed, with DC limited to one entry in the top 10. And that one entry is number 10, Aquaman #1, with a cover date of February 1962. It has a present value of $44,350 for a 9.6. The cover art is by Nick Cardy. It's a key as the first issue of the initial Aquaman series. Those DC comic books of the late 50s and early 60s just couldn't get away from aliens and alien-type creatures. Now starts the run of 9 straight Marvel comic books, dominated by the Fantastic Four. Number 9 is Tales to Astonish, Volume 1, Number 35, with a cover date of September 1962. It comes in at a present value of $62,593 for a 9.2. The cover art and the interior art is by Jack Kirby and Dick Ayers. The title story, Return of the Ant-Man, was written by Stan Lee. He likely set out the plot, and Larry Lieber, who likely wrote the script. This key is the first appearance of Ant-Man, but the second appearance of Hank Pym, who first appeared in the story The Man in the Anthill in Tales to Astonish number 27 from January of 1962. Number 8 begins a run of 5 straight Fantastic Four issues. Number 8 is Fantastic Four number 6 with a cover date of September 1962. It comes in at an FMV of $68,000 for a 9.6. The cover was again by Kirby and Ayers, with interior pencils by Kirby. The story, Captives of the Deadly Duo, was written by Stan Lee and features Doctor Doom and Submariner, both second appearances, but more importantly, a key book as the first team-up of Marvel villains in the Silver Age. At number 7 is Fantastic Four number 2 with a cover date of January 1962. A 9.8 goes for a current value of $83,269. Besides being the second appearance of the Fantastic Four, this key issue introduces the shape-shifting aliens, the Skrulls. The cover is by Kirby and Ayers, with Kirby penciling the interior story by Stan Lee. Number 6 is Fantastic Four number 4. It has a cover date of May 1962. It comes in at a present value of $93,313 for a 9.6. Cover and interior art was by Jack Kirby and Sal Brodsky, with Artie Simek, the letterer. The script was by Stan Lee. This key issue has the first appearance of Submariner in the Silver Age, and the first time the Human Torch activates his power while shouting, "Flame on!" Number 5 is Fantastic Four number 3, with a cover date of March 1962. It has an FMV of $100,000 for a 9.4. This key has the first team appearances of the Fantastic Four in costume, the first appearance of Miracle Man, the first appearance of the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Car, and the Fantastic Copter. The cover art is again by Kirby and Ayers, with Kirby also penciling the interior story by Stan Lee. At number 4, we have Fantastic Four number 5, Meet Doctor Doom, with a cover date of July 1962. This key comic book, with the very first appearance and origin of Doctor Doom, has an FMV of $160,000 for a 9.4. The cover and interior art is by Jack Kirby and Joe Sinnott, and the story is by Stan Lee. We now leave the Fantastic Four and move on to other origin stories for the top 3. Can you guess what they are? Probably. Number 3 is The Incredible Hulk number 1, with a cover date of May 1962. It has a present value of $395,017 for a 9.2. Stan Lee wrote the story, which was penciled and co-plotted by the legendary Jack Kirby. Stan Lee always admired Gothic stories like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Frankenstein. He incorporated the elements of both stories into Hulk. However, with Frankenstein, he based the Good Hulk on the movie version, starring Boris Karloff, not Mary Shelley's book. Lee once said, quote, "In the Frankenstein movie, I always felt the monster is really the good guy. He didn't want to hurt anybody. All those idiots with torches were always chasing him up and down the hills. I thought it would be fun to get a monster who was really a good guy, but nobody knew that." Number 2 on the list of the top 10 most valuable DC and Marvel comics of 1962 is Journey into Mystery number 83, with a cover date of August 1962. It has an FMV of $430,000 for a 9.4. This Lee and Kirby collaboration with Larry Lieber has a number of key first appearances, including the first appearance and origin of Thor. With respect to Thor, Lee stated, "I dreamed up Thor years ago because I wanted to create the biggest, most powerful superhero of all, and I figured, who can be bigger than a god? I chose the Norse gods because I felt people were less familiar with them." Now, there is some controversy here in that Jack Kirby did create a Thor-like character years before he collaborated with Lee on Marvel's Thor. According to Jack Kirby, "I did a version of Thor for DC in the 50s before I did him for Marvel. He had a red beard, but he was a legendary figure, which I liked. I liked the figure of Thor at DC, and I created Thor at Marvel because I was forever enamored of the legends. I knew all about these legends, which is why I knew about Balder, Heimdall, and Odin. I tried to update Thor and put him in a superhero costume. He looked great in it, and everybody loved him, but he was still Thor." We finally get to the number 1 most valuable DC and Marvel comics of 1962. Yes, you guessed it, Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance and origin of the Amazing Spider-Man by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, with cover pencils by Jack Kirby. It comes in at a record-setting $3,100,000 FMV for a 9.6. The book also sports the first appearances of Aunt May, Uncle Ben, and Flash Thompson. So Marvel had 9 of the top 10 most valuable comic books. The DC versus Marvel battle of the comic book values for 1962 is an easy win for Marvel. The final tally? Marvel, 9 books totaling $4,492,192. DC, 1 book for $44,350. A tidbit of publishing history. Amazing Adult Fantasy Volume 1 was a comic book anthology series published by Marvel Comics from 1961 through 1962. It premiered with issue number 7, taking over the numbering from Amazing Adventures. The final 1960s issue was number 15, which was retitled Amazing Fantasy. Now, what's the story behind the Jack Kirby cover? Steve Ditko drew a cover, but Stan Lee told Jack Kirby to draw a new one. The cover that was published was inked by Steve Ditko, but drawn by Jack Kirby. Kirby's cover is bolder and makes Spider-Man look stronger. One thing though, it may be that Kirby was doing an homage to the cover of Action Comics number 7, drawn by Joe Shuster, the co-creator of Superman. Action Comics number 7 shows Superman carrying a bad guy in green on the left, just like Kirby's cover, and Superman looks really high up, and there aren't many people in it, just like Kirby's cover. Action Comics number 7 went on sale on October 25th, 1938. Now, Jack Kirby was working in comics then when Action Comics number 7 was released. He probably would have read it because Superman was new and superheroes were just getting started. Do you think that Kirby was copying Shuster here? Maybe. Let me know your position on this in the comments, please. Unfortunately, being in grammar school with no job and very little disposable income, I only have 3 of the 1962 top 10. The first one I have is Fantastic Four number 3, the first appearance of the Fantastic Four in their uniforms, and the first appearance of the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Car, and the Fantastic Copter. Fantastic Four number 3. The next one I have is Fantastic Four number 4, the first appearance of the Submariner in the Silver Age, but unfortunately, it ain't got no cover. Okay, I'm not sure why it doesn't have a cover, but this is the first appearance, again, as I said, of Namor in the Silver Age, and the first time that Johnny Storm uses the term flame on to become the Human Torch. And the last one I have is Fantastic Four number 6, right, the team up of Doctor Doom and Namor against the Fantastic Four. So if you're interested in seeing some of my Silver Age comics I have in my collection, click here for the series, and click here to see part 2 of this DC vs. Marvel series. Thanks for watching. How about a thumbs up for this one, guys? Be well, and I'll see you soon.